Welcome back, everyone. It's Charlie. DC has been dropping more and more Superman footage. James Gunn, all the actors behind the movie, have been talking about the characters. One of the biggest things, obviously, Lex Luthor, meant to be the actual main villain of the movie. There are a couple surprise villains in the background, like that evil version of Superman that everybody's making black noir jokes about in the black suit. There's the engineer character, a bunch of people that Superman faces, a bunch of threats that he faces during the movie, but really Lex Luthor is still meant to be the main villain. And James Gunn talked about why Lex Luthor in the movie hates Superman so much, like what he did to cause him to do all these crazy things that are going to happen during the movie. Because if you actually look at all the different footage that they've released so far, it actually seems like Lex Luthor is connected to the majority of all the different threats and catastrophes that Superman faces during the movie, even though the different threats themselves all seem very, very different. Asking the real big questions, like why is Lex Luthor such a dick to Superman? Did Superman actually run over his dog? There's a bunch of stuff going on, setting up a bunch of stuff for the future of his DCU movies, so we'll break it all down. If you're brand new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to get all the videos, because this is obviously just the beginning for Lex Luthor in this universe. Most of the time when everyone's talking about the new Superman movie, they're talking about the new version of Superman, like new version of Green Lantern, the Green Lantern Corps. We have the Green Lantern HBO series, mostly just thinking about the big hero characters, like big A-list characters, but really, it's also the beginning of this new version of Lex Luthor and a lot of the villains too. One of the reasons why James Gunn said that Nicholas Hoult specifically won the role of Lex Luthor is because he actually auditioned for Superman too. Like, he auditioned for both Superman and Lex Luthor, but wound up winning Lex Luthor instead because David Corenswet was a stronger Superman performance. Which is also kind of funny to think about, like somebody who would make a decent Superman also makes an amazing or even better Lex Luthor. But he said during Nicholas Hoult's audition, he made him believe that Lex Luthor, or his version of Lex Luthor, absolutely hates Superman with such a burning passion that it was so much more fantastic than any of the other Lex Luthor tryouts.
Somehow become the focal point of the entire world's conversation.
I will not accept that.
So part of the idea of the Superman movie is that it's not an origin story the traditional way. He's been acting as Superman, saving people around the world for a couple years. And in that time, Lex Luthor has grown to hate him with the burning passion that you see in the comics when you think about Lex Luthor really going after Superman, trying to destroy him. Within the context of this movie, though, the whole idea is that Lex Luthor is actually trying to turn the entire world against Superman, because as you get that voiceover from him, like there's a little bit of voiceover from the characters in the most recent trailer. The way that Lex Luthor talks about it, the entire world is just completely preoccupied in love with the idea of Superman, and he absolutely cannot stand that, and he's going to do everything he can during the movie to try and turn that around. So here's where we start digging into some of the specific fight scenes in footage. There are a number of big villains that it seems like Superman faces during the movie. This Hammer of Baravia fight scene where he's fighting the person inside that giant suit seems like it happens relatively early in the movie, and it's like one of the first big threats that he faces. Notice that it seems like this Hammer of Baravia person inside the suit has the same heat vision that Superman has. I think this is confirmation that this is just that evil Superman clone that Lex Luthor created and put him in this particular suit, and then at some point later in the movie, he actually just puts him in the black suit. So it's the same character, like same Superman clone, just wearing a different type of suit. And I think part of the idea is that Lex Luthor creates this Hammer of Baravia identity for this evil clone to sort of dress him up as something different, make it seem like he's from another country, because there's also the conflict happening in Baravia. You see it on all the news stations in the background, it's on all the Daily Planet newspapers. During the trailer where you actually see Lois Lane interviewing Superman and actually make him upset about intervening in a conflict in a foreign country, like you broke across this line when you weren't supposed to, illegally entering another country. All that is the footage where you see them fighting in that foreign country during the different trailer footage with like the little kid holding up the flag with Superman's symbol on it, asking for his help. I think it's also connected to the footage where you see Green Lantern using his Green Lantern ring, hurting all these troops, some of the LexCorp troops too, wearing those mecha gear. You see Mr. Terrific protecting Lois Lane. I think it's all connected to what's happening in the Baravia foreign country. Supposedly Lex Luthor is behind that conflict and he's just using a proxy foreign country to try and take over that country. Not totally clear why. There have been a lot of theories about this. People are like, what if there's kryptonite in that foreign country and that's why he wants the country?
My actions
I stopped a war.
Personally, if that were the case, I don't think that Lex Luthor would need to take over the country in order to get the kryptonite in the country. He would either just buy it or steal it, and he wouldn't bother trying to start a war just to get it. But for whatever reason, it just seems like he creates this Hammer or Baravia identity tied to this foreign power that's trying to take over this country or something to do with this country. But it's really just a mask. Just another excuse to try and get the world to hate Superman. So part of the idea is that he's trying to tear down Superman's legacy so that the public hates him. Basically the same way that Mysterio in Spider-Man Far From Home and No Way Home turned the world against Spider-Man. Basically, villains trying to use social media and the internet, the news or fake news, against superheroes to try and tear them down. Very, very updated modern take on supervillains versus superheroes in movies, particularly in the Superman movies. Like, you think back to Henry Cavill's Superman Man of Steel just a couple years ago, like it wasn't even that long ago. All the villains that he faced were traditional types of villains, like traditional types of superhero fights. It seems like at some point Lex Luthor then is able to break into the Fortress of Solitude, because we actually see that scene where him walking right in the front door with that evil Superman clone in the black suit and the engineer, with the engineer just absolutely ripping through all of his Kryptonian robots. Krypto going after her too. Can't wait to see that. Like, love to see Krypto actually get some fight scenes. Seems like he absolutely just rips her face apart. Like, you can actually see this big gash down her cheek with her nanobots trying to repair it. But I think part of the idea is that he breaks into the Fortress of Solitude because he's trying to steal a Kryptonian communication from Jor-El that talks about Superman, and he's trying to use that, twist it, so that he broadcasts it to the rest of the world, and it seems like Superman has come to Earth to take it over in a bad way, like he wants to spin it in a really terrible way so that the world thinks that Superman is here to conquer them. If you look at the extended footage where you actually see Krypto drag him to the Fortress of Solitude, like after he's gotten his ass beat, probably by that new version of the Superman clone that Lex Luthor creates, because what else would be powerful enough to actually do that kind of damage to him? Another version of Superman with the exact same levels of power. Do you bleed? Yes, quite a bit. When Krypto drags him through the front door, you can actually hear some talking in the background. There's some voiceover, and it's actually speaking Kryptonian. It sounds like Bradley Cooper, who I think is going to be James Gunn's version of Jor-El, and Lara. Like, they're talking to each other in a communication in the background, like the Kryptonian transmission or recording on screens, and Lex Luthor is going to try and steal that and use that against Superman. So when you see him here inside the fortress, standing in front of this Kryptonian technology here, like this console, saying Superman with this weird Mark Zuckerberg fake smile look on his face, I think this is where he has the engineer use her abilities to extract the Kryptonian communication from the fortress's systems, because part of her powers include being able to control and influence any kind of technology. Also would be Kryptonian technology too. She's supposed to be working for Lex Luthor during the events of the movie. There'd be some big moral choice that I think that she's forced to make by the end of the movie. Like, you see her later in the trailers fighting Superman inside the baseball stadium. Notice that Mr. Terrific is like face down, and also that evil Superman clone is face down. So by some point in the movie, it seems like they take out those other people respectively, and then she winds up fighting him. But I think the idea is that she's meant to show up in future movies, so ultimately Superman might be able to talk no jutsu her and get her to back off. But it does seem like she uses her nanobots and just really gives it to him during that fight. At some point later in the movie, we know that Lex Luthor is going to be able to capture Superman using Metamorpho, who's able to create kryptonite himself using his own powers, put him in that cell, and this seems like it's meant to be inside Lex Luthor's pocket dimension, which James Gunn said would be a big twist during the movie, the idea of pocket dimensions, which is another big Peacemaker carryover too. They actually dealt with that because his father had his own little pocket dimension that he uses as a giant weapons locker, basically. Apparently, somehow, Lex Luthor has his own version of that. No idea how they wind up creating this. Maybe the engineer has something to do with it, but it seems like it's been a thing that he's been using for a couple years now. Like, it's not like a brand new thing during the events of the movie. And even though Superman clearly escapes this pocket dimension at some point, it seems like he has a big fight scene with that evil version of Superman inside here too. Maybe we'll see some ties to the Phantom Zone or some connection to that in the movie, some references to it.
Superman.
But I think the whole reason why Lex Luthor hates Superman so much, like you see him confront him in his office here, this is before he throws his desk across the room. This is probably some point earlier in the movie when Superman realizes something terrible that Lex Luthor has done, or he's behind some big thing that he deals with during the movie. You actually see Lex Luthor taunting him here like he's just waiting for Superman to try and hurt him physically so that he can use it against him in the news. I think the actual reason why Lex Luthor hates Superman to begin with, like, what did Superman do to piss Lex Luthor off so much in the beginning that it's turned into this, that it's come to this point during this movie? In the comics, the way they explain it is that Lex Luthor believes that the existence of Superman on Earth actually hurts the human race, like ultimately weakens it, because people have grown so dependent upon Superman to solve all their problems. So he's all about human exceptionalism. So at least in the comics, Lex Luthor believes that getting rid of Superman will actually ultimately help the human race. And he's just willing to do anything to bring that about, like anything to get rid of Superman, kill him, just completely get the world to turn against him so that they won't depend on him anymore. Anything that he could possibly come up with to make that happen. Now in the context of the movie, because the movie isn't going to be like 6 hours long, there'll probably be a quick speed run version of this where they sort of explain some of the history that they have together. And it'll just be a truncated version of this, like Lex Luthor will still believe himself to be superior to Superman. The way that James Gunn said it, he wanted to make Lex Luthor feel like he could be a real threat to Superman, so he wanted him to seem like a sorcerer, but not actually weaving magic. Like Lex Luthor does not actually use magic himself. He just meant to be so smart, so good with technology and science that it seems like magic. And as part of that, there's no moral line that Lex Luthor will not cross to accomplish his goal of getting rid of Superman and turning the world against him. So he just does a lot of really reprehensible things during the events of the movie. One example of that, I think, is creating a clone of Superman using his DNA without Superman's knowledge or permission. There are a lot of people that were making Superman 4 Quest for Peace connections with the Hammer of Baravia because his star looks a lot like the Nuclear Man star. If you remember Superman 4 Quest for Peace, Lex Luthor did the exact same thing during that movie, where the Nuclear Man is actually an evil clone of Superman that he used using Superman's DNA without his knowledge.
Look closely at the cell structure. You see anything familiar?
He's only talked about his future Justice League team-up movies very lightly. Basically, they've been saying 10-year plan, but the way that James Gunn has talked about it, his next real big team-up event-style movie is actually closer to 4, 5, 6 years away. What'll happen is we get more trailers. We'll probably see more footage from some of the other side characters like Green Lantern, Guy Gardner, Hawkgirl, some of the other big characters in the movie like Mr. Terrific. So hopefully they'll give us some more clues about the future of whatever Justice League winds up forming down the road. For everybody asking about that Green Lantern HBO series, we should get some footage for that by the end of the year, but they'll be filming for a while. But everyone post all your reactions and your theories in the comments below. What do you want them to do with Lex Luthor after this movie going forward, if they're going to turn him into a much bigger villain? I just did a bunch of other big Superman and DC videos. Click here for that, and click here to learn about the brand new version of The Flash and James Gunn talking about the next Flash movie too. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.